Way. I am an English teacher at Prince George's County Public Schools. I have been teaching for 16 years. This year, I'm teaching ninth and 10th grade English. My school is a little bit different than other schools because all of the students are multilingual learners. And so it is quite a challenge to teach because they're all at different levels and in the same classroom. And I really did struggle with it because I wanted to do an excellent job and just reach every single student, and sometimes I wasn't able to, which is why I decided to get a master's degree in TESOL. Now I'm making this recording for my last class in this program, the TESOL portfolio, and I can happily say that it really did help me quite a bit to get this master's degree. I feel more confident in my abilities to reach my students. Um, I learned quite a bit um, in this program. What I would like to talk about is assessments. I learned a lot by taking the assessment class at McDaniel. Um, Before I took this class, I used to feel really bad when there was the MCAP or this standardized testing, and our students didn't do so well in those tests because they're own level tests. And but we still there's still a lot of pressure that are that's put in schools to pass this test, especially when you go to a meeting and they show all the school scores. And my school, since it's full of multilingual learners, there will always be completely like the scores were red, and other schools had yellow and green. And that would make me feel bad. But when I took this course, it helped me realize that um, they're not valid tests. You cannot test a multilingual learner on level if they're not at that level. If they're intermediate level, they're not at, well, I teach high school, so 10th grade level. They're not at a 10th grade level. The reading is not 10th grade level. So um, it'll help me, that class helped me create better tests. Now I really pay attention to my students, like, okay, so this is a beginner level student. What's the Lexile level? And when I create tests, I make sure that they have access. The text has to be accessible to the student for it to be a valid test. If I'm trying to see if they learned a skill, how can I expect the student to demonstrate how well they know a skill if they did not understand what they were reading because the linguistic level was too high? That's just not fair. And so when I give my students tests, I make sure that they are able to access it. There are many ways to do that. It used to be very difficult, but now there is a lot of technology out there that can help you. For example, one year I had to teach them I have a dream speech. And that is a difficult speech to teach to multilingual learners. It took me hours. I had to paraphrase the whole speech. And I did a really good job. I did, but it took me hours to paraphrase the whole speech and chunk it for students, and I had questions for each section. It's a good lesson. But now my life is a lot easier because we have technology. We have, for example, there's New Zealand that has these kinds of speeches, like the I Have a Dream speech would be in New Zealand, but they you can lower the lexile level. Also, you can ask ChatGTP. Uh, a lot of the stories are online, so you can say, "Oh, ChatGTP, could you? Uh, I need you to. I need to teach the story titled "The Scarlet Ibis" to my intermediate level English learners. Could you make that story? Could you paraphrase that story to be at an intermediate level for English learners?" And I've done that, and it did a pretty good job. Kind of boring. It created the story. It lost a lot of its flavor. And I told ChatGPT, um, yeah, but the story you created is very boring. It doesn't have dialogue. It doesn't have characterization. It lacks sensory details. And ChatGPT rewrote the story again, and added dialogue and characterization and sensory details. So it's a really great tool that can save teachers a lot of time instead of me having to paraphrase everything. Now I can use the tools, and I use them all the time, and it really helps. So the students have access to the materials. Um, I like this cartoon over here. It says, "For a fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. Please climb that tree." And of course, in the picture, you see there's an elephant, there's a fish, there's a dog, a monkey. Obviously, not all of these animals are going to be able to climb the tree because they're just not able to. Um, I think that this is what we do to our students, and it's very bad. When we give them a test that's way too difficult that they are not yet able to do, it makes it makes them feel defeated. It makes them feel unsuccessful, um, and makes them want to quit. And so it's very important for teachers to create assessments that are truly fair, that they're valid, that they can truly. The program helped me was to teach me how to create better lesson plans, better unit plans. Um, I took a lot of courses to help me. I took how to teach language learners how to read, how to teach language learners how to write. There was a course on assessments. Um, I learned quite a bit. Uh, so I will go over by sharing what I wrote from my teaching philosophy. I'll go over how I like to plan for instruction. Um, First of all, very important is to a lot of background knowledge. You have to provide a lot of background knowledge for students. For skills, I usually like to teach the skills with something easy. For example, if I am going to teach short stories, if I'm going to teach, for example, plot and how authors create suspense, characterization, theme, all of that, I first teach it with something easy like a video, like a short YouTube video that doesn't have words, that all students can access. I do that quite a bit. It's worth it. It's time consuming, but it makes a big difference because then when the student goes to text, when I give them a text, they already know the skill and they're able to apply it to the text. Um, so, same thing with something big in my school is how to teach argumentative writing. We used the CER method, um, creating a claim, finding the best evidence, and then reasoning how the evidence supports the claim. For that, I always teach that skill first with images. And then they read a novel and then they have to create a claim, evidence, reasoning, or or find evidence and then reason how their evidence supports the claim. But before they first learned it with a picture or they first learned it with a movie. So that I learned from McDaniel because they talked about tiering, tiering uh, instruction that helps multilingual learners. Content. It's also important to give a lot of background knowledge with content, especially if you're going to teach a speech or a novel. Since I'm an English teacher, that's what I teach. Um, Students do not have the history. They're from different countries, so they don't have the history or the culture. And so that for them, it's very difficult to access content. And that's why you have to provide students with a lot of background knowledge and content as well. Finally, vocabulary. When you teach, multilingual learners need to learn a lot of words that are in the text before they read the text, because sometimes students don't understand. And you're like, why don't they understand? And it's because they did not know the words. Um, that's something that helped me a lot in my classes that I took. I learned a lot of strategies. Something else in the CEOP model, and also in my job, the international network, they also believe a lot in collaboration. Um, Students also benefit a lot from collaboration because it makes the classroom more student centered. Students like to learn from each other, and it also uh, creates an environment that's conducive to learning, because students are helping each other. And the students who maybe their English is not so good, if you give them a role that's a little bit easier, they're able to do it and feel successful. And then they also get an opportunity to see what the other students that are doing the more difficult things are doing. And so they have access. They're able to have access to all the skills. Since I teach English, I like to do literature circles um, a lot. There's also nonfiction circles. And then at the end of all the units, something else that's in the CEOP model and also in the international network is having a project at the end to assess what students have learned. Something that's real world, experiential learning. So, for example, if I taught my students short stories, if I had a short story unit, then at the end they have to write their own story. Um, and then we will have a literature cafe where students can share their stories with each other. And the stories have to have a purpose, though. It's not just, oh, creative. It's also, it has to be like maybe they're persuasive stories, or they're stories to help students' self esteem, or they're connected to the unit. That's something else that I learned, to explain some of the ways that the TESOL program at McDaniel College was able to help me become a better teacher.